The Enosburg DRB meeting is hereby called to order. This hearing is being recorded. As chair of the town of Enosburg DRB, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by Governor Scott as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and pursuant to Addendum 6 to Executive Order 01-20 and Act 92, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. In accordance with Act 92, there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with the temporary amendments to the open meeting law, I confirm that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by video with additional access offered through telephone. We are using Zoom video conferencing for this remote meeting. All members of the DRB have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if desired, participate in this meeting by clicking the raise your hand option via video or *9 via telephone. Once acknowledged, please clearly state your name and then proceed with your question or comment. B, providing public notice of instructions for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing this meeting, including how to access the meeting using video or telephone in our posted meeting agenda. Instructions have also been provided on the town website at enosburgvermont.org. C, if you are experiencing technical difficulty and are not able to access this meeting with either video or telephone, please call 802-933-4421. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting that are not unanimous will be done by roll call vote in accordance with the law. So we'll start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance of all DRB members, and after you state your name, if you could say if there is any conflict of interest or any ex parte communications prior to this meeting. So we'll start with myself. I'm Pat Hayes, chair of the DRB, and I have no conflict of interest in any of these proceedings this evening.
My name is Matthew Miner. I am an employee of the Village of Enosburg Falls, which may be an interested party in the application for Pomerleau and Tractor Supply, but I do not feel that that will prevent me from being objective in these proceedings.
My name is Shaylee Draper. I do not have any conflicts of interest.
All right. We have two members, one via telephone. Could you please state your name, Jessica?
My name is Jessica Eagles, and I have no conflict of interest.
And then we have Steve Como.
I have no interest in any of these proceedings.
No conflict. Thank you, Steve. And if I could ask any of the participants that this evening prior to speaking, if they would identify themselves for our DRB member who is teleconferencing only by phone. She has no computer access where she lives in Enosburg, so I would ask anyone that is speaking to state your name and before you do speak. So prior to that, I would like everyone to hear the oath that I will state for you, and I ask that everyone who is speaking this evening will actually swear this oath, and here it is. I hereby swear that the evidence that I am about to give in the cause and consideration shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, under the pains and penalties of perjury. Did everyone hear that oath?
Yes.
Thank you. Our agenda for this evening. Pursuant to 24 VSA Chapter 117, together with the Town of Enosburg Development Bylaw and the Enosburg Falls Village Land Use and Development Regulations, a public hearing before the Consolidated Town and Village Development Review Board will be held on Wednesday, October 28, 2020. commencing at 6:30 PM at the Emergency Services Building, 83 Simpsonville Road, Enosburg Falls, Vermont. To consider application number S-5-20 Town. Final plan review following administrative review of a proposed boundary line adjustment for approval under Town of Enosburg Development Bylaw, Article 7, Section 7.2C, and any other applicable sections of the bylaw. The property is owned by Daniel and Jean Oakland, is located at 3341 Purley Road in the Town of Enosburg, and is located in the Rural Residential District, parcel ID number PR3341. Application number CUP 1-20 and number SPA 1-20 Town, continued from September hearing. Conditional use review and site plan application on applicant's request for approval of a disc golf course and pro shop for property located at 2181 Duffy Hill Road in the Town of Enosburg. Reviewed under Home Industry Section 5.4B and all other applicable sections. The property is located in the Rural Residential District with a wetland overlay. Parcel ID number DH2181. Application number CUP 2-20 and SPA 2-20 Town, continued from September hearing. Conditional use review and site plan application on applicant's request for approval of 2 TPs and associated compostable toilets for property located at 2181 Duffy Hill Road in the Town of Enosburg. Reviewed under Campground Section 5.2 and other applicable sections. The property is located in the Rural Residential District with a wetland overlay. Parcel ID number DH2181. Application number S-1A-20 Village Sketch Plan hearing on amended subdivision application following applicant's approved request for reconsideration for a proposed 3-lot subdivision with a proposed easement for ingress and egress to Jayview Drive, a private road. Proposed Lot 3 is 4.97 acres in size. Lot 1 is the remaining land owned by Pomerleau Family Partnership, 10.1 acres of land. Proposed Lot 4 is 1.46 acres reserved for future development. The proposed Tractor Supply development will provide shared access to Lots 3 and 4 off Jayview Drive. The property is owned by Pomerleau Family Partnership. The property is located at 71 Jayview Drive in the Commercial District, parcel ID number JV0071. Application number SPA-1A-20 Village Amended Site Plan Application following applicant's approved request for reconsideration for the proposed construction of a 19,097 square foot building to house a Tractor Supply Company retail use. The business will include an interior pet grooming and washing service area with a 15,000 square foot fenced outdoor display area, a 2,778 square foot sidewalk display area, a 3,000 square foot permanent trailer display area, 65 parking spaces, and associated landscaping / lighting and utilities connections. The applicant is NERP Holding and Acquisitions Company, LLC, and the owner of the land is Pomerleau Family Partnership. This application is being proposed in conjunction with the aforementioned amended subdivision application number S-1A-20 described above. The property is located in the Commercial District at 71 Jayview Drive, parcel ID number JV0071. And approval of September minutes. Pursuant to 24 VSA 4464, participation in the local proceeding is a prerequisite to the right to take any subsequent appeal. All interested parties are encouraged to attend. All applications and files may be reviewed prior to the hearing upon request. Files are located at the town clerk's office in the zoning files. And there you have it, our agenda for this evening. We will start this evening's activities with the application number S-5-20. The property of Daniel and Jean Oakland. Could we have the participants for this property to acknowledge and to describe this, please?
Hi there. My name is Justin Holmes from Pinnacle Engineering, representing Dan and Jean Oakland on this project. The property is located at 3341 Furley Road, consists of approximately 87 acres. Property was originally purchased circa 1978. It was originally subdivided to create 3 lots in 2005 under wastewater permit WW-6-1216, about 15 years ago. At that time, lot 1 included the house with the existing wastewater system and existing spring water supply. And at that time, they identified the replacement wastewater disposal area. Lot 1 was 29 acres. Lot 2 was just 1.58 acres, unimproved with deferral language. And lot 3 was the remaining 56 acres, also unimproved with deferral language. At the time of that subdivision, and currently, lot 1 includes all of the existing frontage, approximately 443 feet, and lots 2 and 3 were accessed via a 50-foot wide right-of-way. Now the landowners propose to do a boundary line adjustment that will result in the existing house plus the existing wastewater system and the existing spring and the replacement wastewater disposal area that was approved under the previous wastewater permit would be on lot 1 for a total of 16 acres. Lot 2 would be eliminated. Lot 3 would be the remaining 71 acres unimproved with the rural language in the deed. And under the current proposal, lot 1 will have frontage of 221 feet, and lot 3 will have frontage of 222 feet for lot 1, 221 feet for lot 3. So they're splitting the road frontage. So they're both in compliance and both have the adequate road frontage. We've gotten confirmation from the state via email that it does comply with the boundary line adjustment exemption. We've submitted that form almost a month ago, and we're still awaiting written determination that will be filed in the land records once we receive it. It is exempt from state wastewater permitting. No actual development is proposed. There's no proposed building improvements, no proposed disturbance of the land, just a boundary line adjustment that will result in, instead of 3 lots, there will be just 2 lots.
Thank you very much. Any questions concerning the boundary line adjustment?
One question that I don't know that I've answered is if the ratio of these lots, length versus width, is appropriate. Have you addressed that, Justin?
What is the required ratio?
Yeah.
Length, lot width to lot? Yeah.
So when the subdivision up there on Pearly Road went in, they had those spaghetti lots, remember this?
Mm-hmm.
And so they were lot shape. Just want to make sure.
I mean, the existing lot is not uniform in shape, and so the existing 3 lots certainly are not uniform in shape. So under the proposal, the lot line between the two, adjacent to where the existing house is, obviously we're drawing a line straight down and relatively perpendicular to the right-of-way of Furley Road. And then the line kind of goes straight back, bisecting the properties. And I think under the current, under existing conditions, I think the lot line more closely follows a stone wall. And under the amendment, or under the boundary line adjustment, it'll be more, it'll include less area on lot one, so instead of 29 acres, it's got the 16 acres with the lot that's relatively perpendicular to the side lot line near the well property.
Oh. Of our regulations, section 2.6 dimensional standards, and I don't know that I've looked at that part of it. Minimum dimensional standards in the table 2.2, and then at the bottom is A through D. There is letter C, minimum lot width shall never be less than 300 feet or 1/2 of the lot depth, whichever is greater, except where expressly permitted by the DRB. So if we could just confirm that, you could all confirm that
Okay.
by looking at the survey.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes, we're going to look at it, okay.
I'm looking at it right now.
Pardon? Oh,
I'm doing some measurements right now.
thank you. So that's, should never be less than 300 feet or 1/2 of the lot depth. Should never be less than, the minimum lot width shall never be less than 300 feet or 1/2 of the lot depth.
Right.
Or 1/2 of the lot depth. And that is page 19 of your
So
regulations.
on lot one, at half of the lot depth, the lot depth is about 1290, somewhere in that range. And at 1/2 of that width, so at about 640 or so, we're close to 500 feet. So it's well in excess of the 300 feet. And then the other lot depth, let me just measure that real quick. I think by the time we're at the midpoint of lot 3A, we're into the place where it widens significantly anyway. But certainly we're above the 300. So total lot depth, I'm trying to kind of take an average. It kind of goes to the back corner where it's as much as maybe close to 3,000 feet. But I think if I kind of take an average of that back lot line, we're about 2760 or so. So if we go to half of that depth, that'll take us to about 1,300, 1,340 or so. And then if we take a line across there, oops. We're at about 605. So at the half lot depth, we are at about 520 on one and about 605 on the other.
So you'll want to determine based on page 69, the regular shaped lots provision, lot layout, that you are in agreement with how he has that set up. Lot designs for the regular shape such as curves, let's see. Regularly shaped lots are required and all lots shall conform to the dimensional standards in 2, which is what we just read. Lots designed in irregular shapes such as curves, jogs, dog legs, bowling alleys, or the lots alternative contorted in order to circumvent these regulations are not regularly shaped lots. So that's what you're basing your decision on.
So it's in compliance.
That's for you to decide. It seems like it is, I just wasn't sure how you felt about this shaped lot. We're not waiting for me here, are we? Okay. You're looking at me.
Hard to say.
Those are just things to consider. I feel they do, but really you have the last say, so.
I don't have any
There we go.
questions about that.
I'm fine. Sheila? We're all set. Steve? Any questions?
No?
Jessica?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
Okay, thanks. I get that, at this time, then, if we have no further questions of the applicant, then we will, move on. And thank you.
Appeal rates, et cetera.
So we have, 30 days. What is the time frame involved
I'm sorry?
for the applicant? They have,
Oh, so I believe there is a closing scheduled, right, Justin? And they were hoping,
Yes.
I suggested that because there is an appeal period on this, that they consult their attorney as to when is the appropriate time to close. But at this point, if the
Right.
board gives an approval tonight, I would just look for a Mylar from you. I would, based on what they approve tonight, if they do. And then the quicker that comes in, the quicker we can get that recorded. And then I assume from there, they will decide when is an appropriate time to close, based on their attorney's recommendation.
Correct, yes, yeah, I believe they're ready to close as soon as they can.
Yeah, I think so. So I'm able to, assuming there's an approval tonight, and then I receive a Mylar, and I get it to the board chair to sign, and we get that buttoned up with a town clerk recording
Sure.
piece, should be good to go on our end,
Yep,
following an approval.
all right?
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For your time.
Thank you, everyone. This is Dan.
You're welcome, Dan.
Thanks, Sam.
Haven't seen you in a long time.
Hi, Steve. Is it okay to leave the meeting now?
Yes, it is, Dan.
Alrighty then.
Did you say it was okay to leave the
Yes,
meeting?
yes, it is.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Next on the agenda. The disc golf course at 2181 Duffy Hill Road. Who is with us this evening for the Rogers? Here we are. Curtis and Jade.
So would you like us to take it off?
Yes, please.
Are you able to hear us, Curtis and Jade?
Yeah.
Okay, great,
You can
thank
hear
you.
us. Okay.
Can you please state your name and acknowledge the oath?
Thank you.
Yes, please state your names and acknowledge the oath, please.
Jade Rogers,
Curtis Rogers, and I acknowledge the oath.
I acknowledge the oath as well.
Thank you very much.
Turn it up just real quick.
Go ahead, Nick.
Go ahead, guys.
Mark?
Can you hear us?
Yeah,
And
we can.
can you hear us?
Yeah.
You can, nice and loud, a little bit muffled, but
Okay, do you want us to pull it up maybe a little bit better?
everybody here okay?
We can hear you fine.
Cool.
Again.
Do I want to address what was?
Well, okay, so we had a wetland determination, is that correct?
So if we can maybe just discuss where you left off.
I think there were three outstanding
Yes.
issues when we ended the last hearing. One was a question of whether or not you had a determination on the wetland overview, whether or not it would require a conditional use permit. Another had to do with your parking location and whether or not there would be adequate space to ensure off-street parking. And the last, I believe, was whether or not you had gotten approvals from the state fire marshal. Would you like to walk us through the new evidence that you're presenting this evening in those three issues?
Absolutely. So as you stated, the three points and needing clarification. First off, you had asked us to, given that there was a wetland overlay, to contact the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources to review our wetlands. After multiple phone calls and emails, I ended up getting a hold of Brock Fryer, who is our district wetland ecologist. He reviewed our property and then also did a site visit on 10/9. And then he noted that our course is within compliance of Vermont state standards, and then offered his determination, which we provided to you.
And I believe you're referring to the email that you received from Brock, Brock, that
Fryer.
acknowledged that the instances where the course crossed wetlands and or wetland buffers, it appears that the guidance on recreational trails has been followed. And discussed areas where improvements on or practices can be implemented to avoid encroachment issues and impacts to the wetlands, notably along the back 9 holes. He cites section 6.16, appropriate footbridges and catwalks, with the acknowledgement that that section has been revised and there are some new alternatives which have been developed that can satisfy allowed use with this approval. It looks as though he also indicated that you should mark out of bound areas, mandatory or Mando's routes on fairways, and provide signage to educate participants of wetlands on the course. and how to address ongoing maintenance in terms of not doing new clearing or brushing.
Additional clearing and brushing, yes.
Yep, okay. So it looks as though at this point, a conditional use permit is not required, but if substantial upgrades are needed, that you would need to reach back out to them and they would make a new determination if that would change the conditional use permit requirements.
So would you like me to move on to the second portion? Or do you have questions regarding Brock's site visit?
Do you have questions about the email from Anna?
No.
It seems fairly clear to me.
Yeah, fairly explanatory.
They worked hard to get this decision.
Yeah.
It was quite a journey to get it.
It was. We got it just in the nick of time.
Yeah.
On the 26th.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say we can, unless there's any other questions from other members of the board, I think we can move on to the next item.
Yeah, we can go on to parking.
So just to preface, Jade, if you don't mind, our meeting today to solidify some of your submission for the site plan.
Yeah.
Curtis and Jade have worked hard to try to figure out where to put that parking to accommodate what they expect to have for an influx of people, guests, and the mixed use, the guests and the teepees, Airbnb piece. Their hope is that they don't have to use the overflow parking, although it is there, but it would be quite a journey to get there. What there is so they've indicated on here where the entrance to this property is.
Mm-hmm.
There was discussion today about there being an additional entrance to that property. And my discussions today with the road foreman, Joey Clark, was that he prefer that secondary entrance not be used. Typically what is allowed is one use in and out for ingress and egress into especially a residential lot or a home industry provision, proposal like this, using that provision. And so he is, his preference is that there be one entrance and not that additional. So if the overflow parking is required, that there would be a road system that goes through your lot. And we had discussed that today, and that's maybe not your preference. Just wanted to at least notify the board what the road foreman had said about entrance in and out, ingress and egress, because of safety, vehicular passing, and just safety of people coming and going on that Duffy Hill Road, town road, private road, or excuse me, town road. So that was the discussion today about that. So these guys have worked hard to create a very large parking area that is just off Duffy Hill Road and is an extension of their existing parking area. And I'll kind of let you take it from there. I just wanted to advise the board that I had spoken to the road foreman, and that was his preference.
Thank you for that, Angie. Yeah, so as you stated, we decided to, in turn, we'd rather not use the overflow parking if at all necessary. We'd rather, of course, extend our public parking area that we had originally proposed, but just to expand that. Our area that we have, we would just expand it to 200 feet versus the 107 that we had suggested prior, which would give us really 13,000 square acres. Feet, sorry, acres. Huge difference. So 13,000 square feet. And then so we looked at, I did some research and looking at like what parking, how many square feet does one car need? And it looks like one car needs about 180 square feet, but then of course you need to adjust for pulling in and pulling out. So the safest way to go about that would be 300 square feet per car. So if we take that 13,000 square feet, we would be able to fit 43 cars within that. I don't think at one given time we're going to have 43 cars there, but at the same time, it would be accessible if need be.
If I remember right, in our last hearing, you discussed the possibility, or that your plan was to have tea times or an organized help me out with your verbiage, tea times for guests that are coming in and out. So 43 cars would be a lot of people there in one time.
Yeah.
You'd be able to control the influx of guests that are arriving and players that are going to be coming. So we get to the point where we're setting those up, then of course we can control
The flow of traffic.
Based on those tea times, is that what you call it?
Tea time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Correct.
This photo that they have submitted, just for the record, is the actual sort of Google Earth version of that entranceway into their property. That's what you're looking at there.
Yeah.
I didn't include everything else that you had there because it was this and that, I think, probably do it. They depicted their course on this. It's not great, but it's a better representation of what we did have, which didn't show the golf course on there at all. So collectively, this is sort of a better site plan of what they're trying to do. And it indicates the location of all of those things that they talked about in their first hearing process for teepees, existing barn, pro shop, how they're showing that pro shop is a portion of that existing barn, which is a requirement in that home industry provision that it be a certain percentage of that existing barn, only that pro shop piece, that pro shop building. Also to acknowledge that they have decided to keep their personal residential parking area separate from that parking area. There would be no widening of that entrance allowed.
Would or would not?
Would not through the road foreman. That's another piece that we discussed today.
So the hedge that's depicted along the roadway, is that existing or is that something you're adding?
It's already there.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
I'm sorry, this is Matt Miner. The hedge that's represented along the roadway from the left side of the entrance over to the leftmost side of the parking, is that an existing hedge or is that something you're adding?
Existing hedge.
Okay. And the fence, is that existing or you're adding?
Existing.
Okay.
So what we would do is where the entrance is, we would just move one portion of the fence where it is and expand it back, but it's existing fence.
This seems like a much more reasonable capacity for parking. How far apart do you anticipate scheduling your tee times?
Depending on, I think, Curtis, that would be best to you.
I mean, tee times should be about 15 to 20 minutes apart. But as of right now, we wouldn't have more than 25 people on the course. So depending on if it's 2 people playing around or 1 person playing around, the times will differ. And we won't have more than 25 people on the course at a time.
Understood, thank you.
What does it generally take to play a round of disc golf for time?
Once again, size of group, 1 or 2 people can play it in anywhere between an hour and 15 minutes to 2 hours. A larger group, 4 or 5, will be 2 hours to possibly 2 hours and 45 minutes.
One thing to note, if I might add, just when you submit a site plan like this, and I know that Jade, you and I talked at length about the existing fence where it is, and that where you're proposing very much expanding that public parking. If this is what you're going with and the board approves this, that would be required. It wouldn't be a, we'll kind of get to it kind of thing. It would be, if that's what you're doing, so that they can see that, you know, so then we come and go into the zoning permit, assuming you receive approval here, you go into the zoning permit phase that you and I spoke about where you deal with just my office, and then we base that zoning permit on what was approved by the board. So anything that was agreed to in there is what you must do. it's not like a future goal, it's really like, okay, we're gonna move that fence and we're gonna allow that enormous parking space, probably in lieu of that overflow parking if the board should approve this as is.
Absolutely.
Any other questions concerning parking from anyone?
Parking is good. Fire marshal.
Steve or Jessica?
Yeah, so the third point was for us to contact Jeffrey Bryant again and to have him over for a site inspection. He did come over to review our property on October 1st. He made two recommendations. First one, for us to file a new construction change of use permit for our barn for the pro shop. And the other suggestion was the teepee to grill or the teepee to cook station needs to be greater than 10 feet in distance apart from one another due to the fire potential hazard. So as you can see on our site plan, we have the distance at 15 feet apart. So to be sure that we're within compliance.
And I'm sorry, you might have said this at the beginning and I missed it. This was a phone conversation, or did you get something in response from writing?
He came to our property. And so Curtis was part of that conversation. And then I followed up with an email, though I haven't heard back, but his recommendations, verbal recommendations, were for us to, again, file a new construction change of use permit for our barn and pro shop. And then, of course, the distance from the teepee to grill.
And have you filed that new construction permit yet?
I haven't. I was hoping for approval from you all, and then, of course, we will file that.
So you realize that any approval from the board would be contingent upon you successfully receiving that permit from the state fire marshal? Okay.
So what Matt is saying is prior to opening day, there would be a visit to the property to ensure that these things are done and that you've met the requirements of the zoning permit, which are a reflection of the Development Review Board's approval of your site plan and conditional use permit. And so those are things that when you guys are finished, you'll come back to me and we'll make a visit and make sure all those things are done.
That makes sense.
Good times.
I don't have any other questions concerning that.
Do you have any, Shaylee?
No.
So
Jessica or Steve, do you have any questions concerning either the parking or the fire marshal's recommendations?
No.
I'm all set on these issues.
and we understand that there's a mixed use here between an Airbnb, which is why they're separate permit
Right.
applications, and which is a campground.
Right.
So I don't know if you have questions as it relates to the campground piece for them, or comments?
Well, we've just done the disc golf, right, so now we're gonna go back over the,
okay.
if I recall, that there weren't any separate issues with the campground application that really differentiated from the disc golf. The same concerns, I think, existed, the parking and the fire marshal.
I believe there is a provision or a requirement in the regulations that might require that you keep a log of that Airbnb. It's pretty simple.
Activity.
It's just kind of one of those things that's required, nothing major. Again, one little thing. It's
Absolutely, I did see that.
part of the fun.
And
Yeah.
we'll
So
And
that's in the campgrounds.
for a year, maybe two. I can't recall exactly how long of a time, but I did see that
Right.
in the bylaws.
And so, part of the application, when you initiated this proposal, was to do compostable toilets, composting toilets.
So for the record,
Are you planning to do those? I just wanted you to acknowledge that you are or not.
We are not.
Okay.
Scratching the compostable toilets and moving towards a rentable portable toilet system.
gotcha. And so basically part of that application will be something that you will you won't make a decision on because they're not doing it. Just to acknowledge that. Thank you. And the reason for that is when you do composting toilets like that, that requires a engineered plan for septic, et cetera, through the state of Vermont. So that's probably one of the reasons that you've decided to hold off on that, because it's a pretty long process of trying to get a composting toilet in there.
Right, yeah, after looking and reviewing the state regulations, I backed away from that pretty instantaneously. Not ready. As of
Did Jeffrey Bryant have an opinion on the portable toilets idea as it relates to this proposal?
As it relates to this, no. And he said he was going to review because we're a sole proprietorship, even if there's need to have. But given that we're going to be having 2 teepees there, I would like somewhere for people to be able to use a toilet facility. So we're going to provide 2.
Based on the site plan I'm looking at, it looks as though you're locating the portable toilets to the left of the pro shot near the parking area. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's kind of just outside the parking area.
Yep. They're not located near the teepees.
I'm sorry, what?
They're not located near the teepees, correct?
Still.
All I hear is it's not located. What did you say?
Near the teepees.
Oh, no, it's relatively close. But like, I don't know, how far would you say that is?
Within 500 to 600 feet of walking.
Yeah.
Angela, can you, are you able to tell where the wetland overlay encroaches on this site plan?
I am unable to do that. I feel as though the requirement of our regulation says that there must be a determination from the state wetland specialist.
Mm-hmm.
We've received one, and I
Mm-hmm.
think probably the board is reliant upon that information and determination. But that doesn't mean they can't be located. I think, though, to give you peace of mind, that because you've received that wetland determination, you're able to then make a decision based on that. Like, that's not a missing piece now. That still doesn't answer your question. I don't know where they are on here. I don't know if you Jade and Curtis are able to identify where those are in relation to the...
I could look them up through the various emails that I sent. I sent the wetland overlay and then popped our course over the wetland overlay and configured that for the Agency of Natural Resources so that they could get a clear view prior to even coming here and doing the site visit. So I could look that up right now if you needed it to make a determination.
It's not critical. Brock references the back 9 holes, so it sounds as though those are the areas that are most impacted.
That's where the majority of our wetlands is.
Okay. I'm good.
Any further questions, Steve or Jessica?
No?
Jessica?
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay, thanks. And I have no further questions.
Nor do I.
So we will give you an answer as quickly as we can. I know that we have 30 days to make a decision, but hopefully it will be prior to that. And you have 45 days after that, pending our decision.
Thank you for the additional effort you put in gathering answers to those questions we had. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Your time.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, thanks. Okay, talk to you guys later.
Are you finished for them?
just tell them if they can go or not.
We're all set.
Yep.
Thank you. We're finished with you. Thank you.
Yep, thank you very much. Have a good evening. All right. Next on this evening's agenda. Application S-1A-20. This is for sketch plan hearing on amended subdivision.
Hello, my name is Steve Diglio. I acknowledge the oath. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, New England Holding Acquisitions Company, represented by Matthew Darling on this phone call. Also representing the project team, we have David Cooper with Facey Gossing with Fee, Michael Willard with VHB, he's the landscape architect, Jennifer Conley, traffic engineer, also with VHB, and Mr. Steve Plosier and Brian Waxler, both with the Parmelo Family Partnership, are also on this Zoom meeting. Like to thank the board for their time on this application. Also like to thank Angela for taking the time to kind of work with us and help us understand the town's interests in this application and making sure we do our best to meet the rules and regulations. We've listened and we've submitted an amended application. I kind of want to go through a brief history of where we're at. In June, we submitted the application for the Tractor Supply Retail project on Jayview Drive. It's a combination subdivision and site plan application. We went through 2 meetings, and then we were denied on August in the July 29th meeting, primarily due to the building siting issue for the site plan. The subdivision was approved with conditions. The board was gracious enough to grant us a motion for reconsideration, and we received some additional feedback from the board. We listened, and we worked with Angela, and we've submitted these amended project materials. It is my understanding, and I just want to clarify with the board, that the existing application is being amended. Is that correct? So what was submitted before that wasn't changed, is that still applicable?
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so for this meeting, I'm assuming we primarily want to focus on the amended portions of the application and focus on those details, and where things remain the same, we'll just state that they're unchanged. Is that correct? I think in the interest of everybody's time, that's the most efficient way to proceed. I just want to make sure you don't want us to go through every single criteria again where things aren't changed from the previous.
That would be fine. That would certainly be.
Okay. So regarding the subdivision, let me pull up. Everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right, so this is just to refresh everybody where it's at. This is the project site off of Jayview Drive. It's the Hannaford Shopping Center. On site, there's currently the McDonald's, the Hannafords, the Dollar Store, and the daycare. To the north of the site, there's McDermott's, the Napa Auto, Community Bank, Fire Station, Rec Fields. To the west, there's multifamily residential, some commercial along Route 105. To the south, there's Franklin Foods, some undeveloped land in the rail trail. And to the east, there's a an undeveloped lot. The main change for the subdivision is the addition of another lot. All right, so here's the overview site plan of the subdivision. We're now proposing that the original 16.53 acre parcel, which is the entire parcel minus the lease lot for the McDonald's, and the lease lot for the McDonald's is not being changed at all in this application. So the 16.53 parcel will be subdivided into 3 lots. What we're referring to as Lot 3 will be the proposed Tractor Supply parcel, which would be an approximate 5 acre parcel, which is outlined here. Lot 1 is a 10.1 acre parcel that would be the retained land for Parmelo that includes the Hannaford's development and the existing development minus the lease lot. And Lot 4, which we're referring to as the northern parcel, would be a 1.47 acre parcel located to the north of the proposed Tractor Supply lot. Access for vehicles for both lots 3 and 4 would come from the J-View Drive with a shared driveway access. Utilities for both lots are coming off of J-View Drive as well, at least water, sewers coming from the sewer main traversing the property. And then we have electrical and gas coming off of Route 105 coming down where there'll be an easement. Again, the main change for the subdivision application is now the addition of a new lot, which an intervening lot between the Tractor Supply parcel and the in Route 105. When it comes to traffic and things of that nature, there is no changes. We do have the traffic engineer here to answer any lingering questions that may be available in regards to the subdivision, but that's about it when it comes to the subdivision changes. It's just the addition of the additional lot. Is there any other criteria or you'd like me to review or any questions regarding the subdivision portion?
Is there, this is Matt Miner, is there any proposed building envelope associated with, am I saying this right, Lot 4? Is that the northmost lot?
It is.
There's we put the setbacks in, and there's also the wetland buffers, which would likely be excluded, but there hasn't been a specific building envelope designated. That lot is reserved for future infill development. It is anticipated that any development on that lot would be as close to Route 105 as possible, with the building, as close to the road as possible, and parking to the south.
Are there any existing right-of-way accesses to any of the lots south of lot number 1 from the previous subdivision?
I'm sorry, I had a hard time hearing that.
Are there any existing right-of-ways to either of the lots that are south of the original lot number 1?
South of the original lot? Not that I'm aware of. We had Mr. Chafee, who's a local surveyor, do the survey for us, the boundary included, and I'm not aware of any specific right-of-ways or easements that are currently on to the south. So here's the existing site plan and boundary layout. I mean, there's obviously the easement for the town sewer main, but that's the only one I'm currently aware of personally.
This, I'm looking at this existing abandoned way pipe to be removed as needed. See that? What is that, this gray line? And if so, is there a right-of-way already there? Over that? Is that utilized as a potential right-of-way? That says to access those lots southerly up. Up and fields.
Angela, if you're speaking, I'm not hearing what you're saying.
I'm wondering what the, make sure I'm reading this correctly. Edge of pavement. On lot 3, the tractor supply lot, on the southwesterly corner, it indicates existing abandoned way pipe to be removed as needed, and it's pointing at something. Is it pointing that light gray line that sort of dissects the southerly corner of lot 3 and over into lot 1?
That's an abandoned way pipe that used to come from the Franklin Foods property. It's no longer in use. That is something that I conversed with the previous engineer, Mr. Mapes, about, and it's our understanding it's been completely abandoned and there's no rights for it.
There's no what for it?
Rights.
Oh, okay.
For it on the property for like no retained rights that I'm aware of.
There's no existing deed easement for that?
Excuse me?
Is there an existing deed easement for that? That way pipe?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
It was the previous owner's pipe. Howard Leach put that pipe in years ago.
Right, but
Yeah.
right.
Okay. Thank you for answering my question about the easement.
I mean, that pipe's already been disrupted, by the way, due to the Hannaford's. As you can see here, during the Hannaford's development, it was already disrupted and taken out of use.
This is John Elwell, Village Manager for Enosburg Falls. Since you guys are talking about the wastewater line, is this an appropriate time to raise a concern that the village has regarding location of a tree within that line? Or would you like us to wait?
We can go over that when we present the landscaping plan. I know what tree you're talking about, and we will be moving that. But we,
Okay,
if the board would like, we could move to the landscaping plan now, or we could do that when we're under site plan review.
Let's stick with the subdivision until we.
We'll continue on our present lineup.
I don't know. I'm surprised that nothing was ever done with that before. For those other lots.
For what?
Those other lots, I'm surprised there was nothing ever set up for those. I'm talking about these people.
To get to this.
The only access is that road.
Okay, I'm talking about, you asked about the right of way to get to these from off one.
For these people across this lot.
Is this an option?
Angela, I'm not hearing you again.
Is my question. Okay, maybe an opportunity. Yeah, just trying to make sure we're on the same page here for information with the board.
like us to go over to keep things moving?
I haven't got any more
Just-
questions.
Just keep it going.
You're asking about an easement to access the lots contingent, are you asking about that easement?
I did, and he answered me.
You done with
Yes.
this? Okay. This is your time for discussion about
I understand.
accessing that lot.
I understand.
You can continue.
Are there any other board questions concerning the subdivision modifications?
No.
Steve or Jessica?
No, I'm all set with the subdivision.
All set?
Do you want to have the applicant move into the discussion about the site plan?
Yes. So, we shall go into the amended site plan at this time.
Okay. Moving on to the amended site plan. The changes to the site plan consisted of the site. I'll start with the site plan and the building siting, and then we'll move on to the landscaping plan. So John could get his point across. Let me just zoom in a little bit here. So the biggest changes were an attempt, after talking with Angela, we flipped the permanent trailer parking area with the parking spaces to avoid having parking between the building facade on the east side and J-View Drive, which at the meeting on the motion to reconsider meeting was determined to stop at near the stop sign for the daycare. That was the main change to this. In addition, obviously with the subdivision, we now have the intervening parcel to the north. The wastewater connections, water connections, stormwater, grading, all remain the same. The parking layout, aside from the shift to avoid parking between the eastern facade and J-View Drive, is the same. The proposed access to the northern lot remains the same. So it's really just a matter of removing the parking along the east side for the extent of J-View Drive.
Steve, this is Matt Miner. Can you tell me what that band is to the right of the permanent tractor display area? It's kind of a double line with some hash marks. Yes, that. What is that?
Right here,
Yes.
that's a small retaining wall. The
Okay.
purpose of that is to avoid the wetlands.
Thank you.
I could,
So that would be at grade with the parking surface?
correct. And you can see there's a small guardrail there, just to, even though there won't be parking, there'll still be a trailer display area there, so just for safety, general safety.
Thank you.
So, you have flip-flopped the, I can't see it in my eyes here. Permanent,
Tractor display.
the pink section, what are we calling that? I can't see it, sorry. Trailer display, thank you.
Trailer display.
And then,
You want me to go back?
you flip-flop that and you have the parking below that or to the south of it. which would not be in front of what you might consider the facade on Jayview Drive. Is that accurate, Steve?
I'm sorry, I had trouble hearing you.
The permanent display in pink was south of that. Since our last hearing, you've moved it north and you've flip-flopped the parking there, to avoid there be.
17
Yeah.
parking spaces south of the permanent trailer display.
So we would have some parking still between the facade on the east side and part of that. Jayview Drive doesn't go down that far. Do you all understand that?
Yep, I understand.
My understanding as well.
Yeah, there would still be 5 spots on the eastern facade, but it's JV Drive ends prior to them.
There'd still be 5 spots on the east side. Is that what you're saying, Steve? Just trying to understand.
Yes, he did say that.
So there's
Right
17.
where that number 17 is, you count them, and there are 5 spots to the south of the permanent display area.
So all of the rest of those that look like parking spots are not parking spots?
The way I look at it, there's 17 there.
Yeah. So are there 17 spots on the southerly side of the display, or 5?
There's 17 spots total on the east side, correct?
Thank you. Not 5.
There's 5 within the footprint of the building, so the side of the building there'd be 5, but there's no road between the facade and those parking spaces.
Thank you, Steve.
Is there any other questions regarding this? This really gets to the heart of the building siting issue with the first application. So this would be, I think, a good time to have a discussion if there's any concern or issues with this arrangement.
Steve, if I might, this is Cooper. Why don't we have Mike talk a little bit about the landscaping, because I think that also sort of is, intervening between parking and roads. It might be a good thing to focus on.
Alrighty, let me. All right, Mike, do you want to take it away? Here's the landscaping plan. That was the amended landscaping plan.
Steve, I think if you go to the second sheet.
Everybody.
Yep. So good evening, Mike Willard with VHB, landscape architect, acknowledge the oath. So the significant changes to the landscaping plan since the last submission, we added a lot of screening around the perimeter of the pavement areas. And so on the north side of the lot, there was a lot of, basically we introduced kind of a mix of evergreen, deciduous trees, and kind of understory planting along that edge of the 13 parking spaces that are up that kind of, I guess, face Route 105. So it provides a lot of screening along that edge. And then on the east side, that faces like Jayview Drive towards the Hannaford Plaza, again, similarly, more deciduous trees and evergreen trees to create a nice buffer along that edge of the pavement.
Just to butt in real quick, the tree that I think John was talking about is this tree right here within the easement. And my thought is that this would just be pushed north. Do you agree, Mike?
Yeah, that's easy to move. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just confirm then, this is John Elwell, Village Manager for Enosburg Falls, and I acknowledge the oath. Yeah, that that was the tree we were concerned with, Steve. So if you're aware of it and have plans to move it north, Brian or Gary, you can chime in, please, if you have other comments. But I think that would probably remedy the concern that we have.
This is Brian Ovid. I agree entirely. Just like to see anything kept outside that easement.
This is Gary Denton, Director.
Understood.
Lighting. So, I had a question. I see the trees on the north side of your entrance, and you also have a water line. Is that trees over the water line, or are they beside the water line? I mean, it's not our jurisdiction, but this seems like you got a lot of trees over a water line. In case you have any.
We'll make sure the trees are separated by at least 10 feet from the water line. That's required from the wastewater permit.
Okay.
Gary?
I'm good.
Okay. Did anybody hear that?
A lot of trees were close to the water.
Yeah.
So you're acknowledging, okay, all right.
He did acknowledge those.
Thanks.
I have a question. To the right of that tree that we just discussed, moving northward off the wastewater easement, there's also a tree that, the next tree to the right appears to be in the center of what would be the proposed easement for the northern lot.
Yeah, the proposed access. My thought is that's just either also could shift to north or slightly to. There's a culvert right here, so we'd have to work around that. But yeah, I mean that one will also be slightly altered to make sure we have that. We put Mike in a tough spot with this one when it came to submitting. So this is more on me than him.
I mean, that tree placement, the tree could go in as part of this development and then be removed when and if that access gets created for the future development to the north that fronts Route 105. Or reincorporated in when that development happens.
Thank you.
John? Is it John? Mr. Willard?
Yes.
If I might. The screening that you were proposing on the northerly side of lot 3, or that in between lots 3 and 4, which is an effort for screening.
Yes.
And maybe you've already said this, but if you would just reiterate that the various types of landscaping and screening you're planning in there will not be like we have along the Route 105 portion where there are tall trees and we're looking at skinny trunks, and through that you can see buildings from the highway. But yet these would be various widths, heights, and creating essentially a pretty solid screen between that proposed Tractor Supply building and Lot 4, or proposed Tractor Supply building and Route 105. So really you maybe only be seeing the signage above the proposed screening and not the front of Tractor Supply from Route 105?
Right, yes, so the idea behind the design was to create kind of a blended mix, understanding that we have leaf-off conditions for, 5 months of the year, and so we blended in some evergreens along there, again, evergreens and deciduous trees with understory planting of some medium-sized shrubs, so you kind of get a layered effect with the proposed plantings.
And that's pretty well detailed on LA 101A, the plant schedule.
And is the shrubbery that's proposed there, is that relatively mature when it's planted, so that there's sort of an immediate screening there, or pretty solid screening?
They, typical, landscape application of these shrubs are going in at like 18 to 24 inch spread and 24 to 30 inch spread, and then the proposed shrubs, it's red stem dogwood and this spirea. They're actually kind of a medium to fast growth. So it'll take 3 years or so for them to kind of start filling out to reach that kind of full mature size. But it won't take long.
Do you all understand that? So you may not have screening for
I
a few
do.
years.
I know what spirea is.
Me too. It's not,
Hmm?
if you're looking for heavy screening, I don't know that that's
Well,
gonna do it. I mean, so the reason I ask is because screening that has been approved by the board in, the last 4 or 5 years, and what was installed really was essentially not screening. It was an attempt, and then we had neighbors calling in and saying, that's the screening that they've put in, and that doesn't work for us. And so I feel it's important to bring this up now so that you can address that and have a conversation back and forth to decide what there might be, if at all, so that we don't have to continue this discussion. I know screening was a pretty large issue, screening from the road, and so I would encourage the board to have a back and forth conversation about that if there's any question before we end this hearing.
So when we look at the CA2 representations on the plan, to scale, those are drawn as 24 or as 30 inch?
If you were to scale those up, they'd be measuring, like 2.5 feet in diameter, 3 feet in diameter.
Okay, so the representation on the plan is about 30 inches then?
Yes, correct. Yes, which is not their mature size.
So John, you would agree that a full screening there may not happen until the second going into the third year of plantings? Michael, Mr. Willard.
Yeah, it's like any landscaping. It takes time for landscape to mature. So it takes, a few years for everything to kind of grow together and to create that kind of vision that you have for what you're trying to achieve. It's not an instant situation, unfortunately.
Thank you.
These also are supplementing the existing trees along Route 105, which are 20 years old and relatively mature. This building is also 10 feet below 105, which means, we're going to be looking over the parking lot and only really seeing the second story facade portion of the building, and until everything matures.
What comes to mind for me is if there's proposed development on lot 4, which we're all hopeful for, is that by the time this screening becomes mature, would there be a reason for it to be there?
Yes.
Yes?
It still needs to be screened from adjacent uses.
But if you're proposing sharing parking on the south side of lot 4 buildings and the north side of lot 3 buildings, does there still need to be screening?
With the lot 4 development, when that's proposed, we'll go through a development review process, and these hypotheticals will be realities then that the board can discuss. Even if there's a need to screen between lots, and there's room to do additional screening on lot 4 if needed, between lot 4 and 3. And if these lots are connected, my assumption is they'd be connected on this side right here. So you could do a loop in and around for lot 4. But that'd be an assumption. until the actual development happens. But that would just be the logical way, in my opinion, if you needed, depending on what that development is. But if there needed to be a way to get a delivery vehicle in there, you'd want to loop around.
Gotcha.
So and like with the first application, the hedgerow on the west side's remaining the entire length of the parcel, which is fully mature at this point. Is there anything additional regarding the landscaping, screening, building siting?
Going back to those 5 spots that would be visible from on the east side of Lot 3, those remaining 5 spots, there is landscaping plan there. I see it, okay.
Correct.
Hey Andy, this is Jessica. I don't have this screen in front of me. I do have the site plan here. What 5 spots? Can you just tell me exactly what 5 spots you're referring to?
Do you see the number 17 on the?
Yes.
It'd be
Yes.
that and the 4 below it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I know there was discussion, I guess maybe this is a question for Steve. Are you there, Steve? Those five spots that are in between the facade of the building and JVU Drive, the 5 of those 17, if those seem to be an issue, I know that at one point you and I discussed possibly moving those to the west side if that made this option better.
If it's an issue and the applicant agrees to it, there could be a potential relocation of those spots. That's not the preference, obviously, and yeah, so it all depends on if it's a required or not. What's presented is what the applicant wants to move forward with. But there's a whole bunch of different ways things could potentially be moved around. It doesn't mean they're going to be functional for the Tractor Supply, and the applicant's not going to move forward with a site that's not going to work, and then we just have a vacant building, which wouldn't be good for the town or anybody. So this is the preference. If that becomes if those 5 spots are an issue, that's something we can reconsider, obviously, but it's not the desire.
What is the particular reason that we're so set on those spots?
I can't hear you. Can you hear the question being asked?
What's that?
Can you hear the question?
I did not hear it.
Okay.
I'm just curious what the reasoning is as to why the applicant wants those spots there specifically.
Which one?
Just curious. Like those 5 or 17, why they prefer to have the parking on the east versus the west. Just what the reasoning is, that's all.
I mean, the reason for the parking is so people can it's mostly convenience for stores. I mean,
Right, but you have all the parking in the front, so I'm just curious about those specific spots.
So we're already looking for a reduction from 95 to 65, and the Tractor Supply Company needs a minimum of 65 spots based off of the way they operate. So that request for reduction is still applicable to the amended application, and for any retailer, it's always desirable to have spots near the convenient spaces. So having the 17 spots down below means there's 17 spots for the fenced-in display area for access into that area. And the closer to the building, the closer to the front. It's always what a retailer wants.
Right, so versus the other side of the building, it's just more convenient to have it on the east side?
If I may, this is Matt Darling. I'm the applicant. I do acknowledge the oath. Just to back up for a little bit, we had that parking up further to the north where the trailer display is currently, or being shown now, which is actually our true preferred location. But to comply with the zoning regulations, we flipped it. So now they're further to the south, which is okay. I mean, they can be used for employee, they can be used for overflow. But we need a minimum of 65 spaces to comply with Tractor Supply's minimum standards, as well as the towns. I mean, I know we're already under the towns, but our preference is to have those spaces where the trailer display is, and we've only flipped those to try to comply with the regulations. And I believe putting them on the other side is going to be it's not going to fit as well. And you already have the truck traffic over there, so where they are now is really our preference. Our second preference anyways.
Okay, that was my question, why those spots wanted to be on this side, but you said trailer parking, so that was my question. Right, to be next to the trailer parking instead of on the other side of the building.
Still on your, so remember you're trying to meet 3.3F here. And
right.
So back and forth conversation about what they would consider would be great.
I'm not able to hear the current discussion.
I was just to continue my point of the 17 spaces on this side of the building instead of the other side of the building. You answered it saying that you wanted it closer to the trailer and the fenced-in area. I was just curious if the applicant is open to moving it to the back side of the building. I know it's not your preference, but would you be willing to if for some reason the board decides that is an issue?
And my comment, David, was to have a back and forth conversation about what could be considered so that we can have a conversation about this and potentially address these things today.
Sorry, absolutely. And, again, I think we've really tried to hear what the board had to say. Our understanding from last hearing was that Jayview Drive ends at that turn into Hannaford. So, I think we're complying. I think where we put the spaces, we're not violating the one section that was the basis of the denial before. I'm just a lay guy. I don't know, site plans, but it seems to me that, a condition requiring us to put parking over on the west side, right in the middle of the principal truck lane and delivery lane, would be problematic. But I think the applicant has stated it, certainly that we're here wanting to have a robust discussion, and if the board wants us to lose or move those spaces, we will consider it, absolutely.
Just to clarify, we cannot lose them, otherwise I lose the tenant. So I need 65 spaces or more.
My mistake.
Are there employee parking spots here that maybe I haven't noticed? Are any of these reserved for employee parking?
No, not reserved, no.
How many employees do you anticipate having?
Tractor has between 13 and 17 employees, depending on the season. But let me clarify that they're not all on the clock at the same time. If you're talking about on the clock, probably between anywhere between 7 and maybe 7 or 8 people. Again, that's going to fluctuate.
Can you give a little bit of a description of the appearance of the trailer display area? What will be located there?
Smaller landscape style trailers that are typically pulled behind a pickup truck. They're generally between, well, you have 4x6s, you have 5x8s, stuff like that. Single axle, there may be a couple of dual axles, but normally they're all single axles. They fit within a parking space, and they're designed to sit in a way where customers can back up their vehicle, hook up to them, and drive away after they bought them.
Thank you. Is it fair to say that there could be somewhere in the vicinity of 10 to 15 trailers in that area?
Yeah. Yeah.
Back to the landscaping and the shrubs and the trees. If the board did want something that was more heavily fenced from, or I guess heavily fenced screened from the northerly lot, are we set on the trees and shrubs that were picked, these specific types, or if we wanted something different that was going to be heavily screened within the first year, is that something the applicant would also be willing to change?
I think that was a question for us, folks.
Yeah. So, sorry, I'm having trouble here.
Yeah, can you repeat that?
Yep. I was just asking about the landscaping, the trees and shrubs that were chosen. If the board did want a more heavily screened area and they wanted something different, are the trees and shrubs that are chosen, is that something you were set on, or is that something you were open to changing if need be?
This would represent the most that we could do. We are talking about a retail tenant that needs a little bit of visibility. We don't want to see them go dark in a few years. So
no, I don't necessarily mean like more trees.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I didn't mean like more trees. I just mean a different variety instead of those specific types of trees and shrubs.
I guess if they were within the same caliber of what we're proposing now, I don't see an issue. I mean, does Mike, what do you think? I mean, is that opening us up for any problems? I mean, we've designed this to match the climate and all that, so I would be worried about opening up to other alternatives.
Yeah, I guess this is Mike. I guess I would ask, is there a specific species that you're concerned with, or are you trying to achieve a different result?
Yes. Well, earlier in the discussion, they had just said how one specific type of tree is pretty sparse up until about 3 years in. So I was asking if the board wanted something that was going to be heavier screening, would you be open to that instead of that specific type of tree? Or do you want those specific trees and shrubs because of the screening that you're going to get within 2 to 3 years?
Well, I mean, part of I guess I can explain the design a little bit. Part of it is it really is to create like an aesthetic, a layered effect, and so that it doesn't become like a suburban aesthetic. It's more like a naturalized screened edge. So you've got kind of the movement of the plant material, not only vertically, but texture and color and seasonal interest, as well as kind of the evergreen approach, introducing the evergreens there for the wintertime screening as well. So obviously, we're open to entertain if there's specific species that someone would like to see or change, then we can have that conversation and see what works.
That was my question.
This is Matt Miner. Based on the question I asked earlier, my understanding is that the way these are depicted on the diagram is how they will look at the time of planting, not how they will look 3 years from now. Is that correct?
Yes, for the shrubs, the trees are depicted at kind of like a medium, they're like 12 and 15 feet diameter on the evergreens, which they eventually get 40 feet in diameter. And with the deciduous trees, I think they're depicted at 20 feet, 25 feet in diameter, and eventually, they'll be 40 and 50 feet.
Correct. So these depictions are at the time of planting.
Very close, yes.
Thank you. This is pretty heavily screened.
And yeah, with that yeah. So there's not a lot of space in between each of this proposed shrubbery.
Yeah, the idea is that it would all grow together and create kind of a nice, layered aesthetic, a landscape appearance along that edge.
Yeah, if I can address, I think the questions the other board members are asking is the concern that this was what it might look like 3 years from now rather than what it will look like at the time of planting. And based on what you've said to me, my understanding is that this would be what it would appear like at the time of planting. Or close to it.
Correct.
Yeah. And to me, that seems with the layered effect and the overlap of these, because you've got several plants deep across that area, that's pretty heavily screened.
Mike, if you could, maybe you've already said it, I'll ask again. What is the height, the height of these things when they're planted? How much height screening would we have there? What's the tallest that we might be able to see there?
Well, the Arctic fire, perhaps.
So what do you anticipate?
These, unfortunately, the trees don't come out of a cookie cutter machine. But coming out of the nursery at 2.5 to 3 inch caliber for the deciduous trees, they're going to be somewhere in the range of 15 to 20 feet tall, depending on how they matured in the nursery before they're dug out.
So they will.
The evergreens are already depicted there. Their installed height varies from 6 to 8 feet, 8 to 10 feet tall.
That's pretty good.
That's
pretty good screening.
Do you have already prepared any renderings that might show a profile of this so that it was just easier for the board to visualize?
That's a great request.
I don't think
We don't currently have like an elevation or a
Yeah.
section.
Yeah, an elevation.
I think there's building elevations in the package, but I don't believe there was anything that shows what the view would be from like 105 or looking from the north back to the parcel.
Yeah, the elevations that I've seen in the materials provided don't necessarily depict the landscaping, just the building facade. I just wondered if you had something that the board could visualize. Based on the descriptions that I've heard, this appears to be pretty thoroughly screened.
So if I might just say out loud, in hearings past, one of the issues was that we had the front of a building on a highway, which was where we felt it didn't meet the regulations. And so besides it being lovely aesthetics, all of these screening planning is also to avoid having a facade, the building front that you can see completely from ground up from Route 105. Is that clear?
In that example, what was the screening material that was used in that application?
Are you asking a question, Mike? Steve?
Yes.
Sorry.
Is that?
Just the example you were giving, I was wondering what the plant material that was used in that screening application.
That you were just referring to, Angela.
I'm sorry, I'm confused about what are we looking at here?
This is what was contained in the landscaping narrative, which would be the example of the deciduous trees, the 2 to 3 inch caliber version. I don't believe we have any photos of the shrubbery available at the moment. One thing I'd like to add is the landscaping along the very northern property line. That's all going to be 5 feet above the parking area, and almost 10 feet, 9 feet above the finished floor of the building. So this is enhancing kind of the topography is also helping with screening, in addition to the robust kind of layered effect that Mr. Willard has come up with.
So when this is planted, when this is constructed and it is planted, from Route 105, you'll look over at the Tractor Supply front, which is on the north side, and because it sits lower than the road, you won't see a lot of that because of the heavy screening you're planning. Is that accurate? With the exception of the sort of second story facade that you're planning.
Right, it's a mix of evergreen and deciduous trees, so I would call it like filtered views. But yes, it'll be buffered from your views from 105.
That's kind of what you're hoping for, right?
Yeah, I think they've done a good job of addressing that concern.
Yeah.
From my perspective.
I would agree. Seems like a good plan.
I didn't hear that last exchange. Was that a question for us?
Just internal conversation acknowledging the positive efforts behind the screening.
Great, thank you.
You're dealing with, are you done with this discussion, or are you going to deal with facade and locate which side is facade? If you're looking at your 3.3, let's kind of deal with, make sure with the orientation of this building that they have what you're hoping for. So,
do we have anything else on the site plan?
Yeah. Have you looked through building siting and building facades? Have you answered all those questions?
Yeah.
So, the entrance is on the north side of that building. There is no entrance on the east side planned. Do you have any questions relating to that as it relates to 3.3, 1, 2, and all of those subsections?
No, I don't.
All right. Inclusion of design features, corner system, okay. The use of the clearly defined entry doors and with added detail. So, let's see. Building setting. Building shall be located and designed to encourage interconnectivity between neighborhood. Pedestrians is emphasized. New parking shall be located behind or alongside buildings. New parking areas shall not be located in between the road and any facade of the building. Buildings should be located as close to the road as allowed by this bylaw and as practically given site topography considerations. Building facade. Let's see. The portion of any building visible from the road shall be given special detailing and architectural consideration. So the road being either private or public,
This includes adequate number and arrangement of openings and windows, avoiding either a cluttered appearance or a blank facade. Clearly defined entry doors with added detail. So have they answered your, the requirement for 3.32A1?
In my opinion, yes.
So there's no door on that east side where they're going to be pulling in. I know that has come up in the past, I just want to address it.
There's no indication that that's a requirement.
And so, avoiding either a cluttered appearance or a blank facade. So that east side, will there be some sort of, I think there's windows or something on there, and I think they've gone to the extent of also including.
Steve, could you bring up the building elevation diagram for us, please?
So here's the building elevation drawings. With a question on the east side, I've had a hard time picking up.
Yeah, the east side, Steve. That
Yeah,
facing
the east
JV
side
Drive.
would be elevation 3. So you can see it. This would be what it would look like from for a portion for JV Drive, and then the rest from the access behind the Hannafords. So this would be, your front door, front accessway, and there's these windows. It's basically they designed this as if it was a corner lot for aesthetics, and there's screening for the mechanicals on the roof, and there's windows, faux windows with awnings as well. I could zoom in some.
I would definitely not characterize that as a blank facade.
This hasn't changed from the last application.
That's not a blank facade.
I would agree. Just want to make sure, because typically their buildings are on the side, so.
Angela's question to me was whether or not that east side facade met the requirements that it not be cluttered or appear as a blank facade, and I would say that that's definitely not a blank facade.
I just want to make sure it's addressed here at this hearing. Seems like it looks great. Steve, that to the south of that, the gray area, if you wouldn't mind, that right there. Okay, so that is the 4-foot swing. So that's that's that pink area that we were looking at, right? And then beyond that, south from that, would be the 7. No.
No.
That's the chain link around the outdoor display area, correct?
Yeah, that's the.
Oh, over here, right. Okay.
Outdoor display area. Is the chain link fence. And then here's the building.
This is the, you have one of those over there.
I probably do. I'm just.
The pink area would be trailers parked over near, under those two
Right.
facades to the right.
Right. So just to say out loud, the parking, the permanent display would be in front of those two windows on the northerly end of the east side, correct?
The trailer display basically starts flush with the building and would extend somewhere in this range. Might have to scale it off, but
Yeah.
it only leaves, there's 5 spots that the closest to 50 feet, so you come to about here, with the end of the trailer display.
And then the 5 spots of the 17 would be north of that, right there under those
50
southerly.
south of it, so the 5 spots would be in this vicinity here, and then the rest would be trailer display to the north. So the north would be to the right of elevation 3.
Okay.
And then the fence display area is, to the south. So this is, trying to think, 50, and so somewhere around this construction zone right here would be the transition from parking to permanent trailer display.
Sheila, are you noting that where those 5 parking spots would be on the southerly end of the east side of that building?
What's that?
I was just, Shaylee had asked a question earlier about those 5 spots that are really on the, kind of that east side front. And I was just acknowledging out loud that we all understand that those 5 would be in front of those 2 windows on the southerly end of the east side.
Just to reiterate to the board, those are all south of the agreed terminus of J-View Drive.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
At this point, is there anything more that the applicant would like to point out to the board?
I mean, we've gone through our amendments, which was basically the altering of the site plan with the parking spaces and the landscaping plan alterations to enhance screening. At this point, we'd like to really ask the board if they have any concerns or if there's any deal breakers. You know, we really want to work with you guys and have an understanding, but there has to, you know, we just don't want to end up like the last time where we kind of left feeling good and positive, and were unfortunately turned down. We're hoping that, you know, this has a positive result. We feel we've listened to your concerns and done our due diligence to address them. And, you know, if we haven't, we'd kind of like to talk it through now, just so we, you know, we can discuss other options, or the applicant can move forward with potentially another site if this isn't going to work for him or the town.
Jump in here.
Go ahead.
I think before we respond directly to that, it would be helpful for us to know if there are any interested parties that have additional testimony they'd like to present at this time, and/or any public comment.
I'm sorry, I couldn't. I'm having a hard time really making out some of this. Can you please repeat that?
I think we'd like to hear from any other interested parties who want to provide testimony or public comments to see if there's any other perspectives the board needs to consider. Do we have any indication of raised hands from anyone?
No.
I know we've heard from the village concerning the location of one tree and the utility easement. Are there any other interested parties in attendance tonight that wish to be heard?
Apparently there are none.
Or public comment?
Are you going to discuss it all? Because I know it'll come up tomorrow. Master plan requirements. It'll be asked tomorrow. And did you have a question
I do have a question.
or a comment?
I have a question about the application.
Speak up.
Nice and
I
loud.
was just waiting for,
No,
are we done
there-
with?
there's no other public comment.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
I have a question about the lighting. I don't have the original submission in front of me, the original site plan. I just have the specifications that was in this packet. I don't remember from the first time, so could you just give me a brief overview about the lighting and specifically like the wattage used for the lights? I'm just curious to make sure that we have a figure in our regulations, and I don't remember what you had said that it would be compared to what we require. So just making sure that it matches.
Mike, would you like to provide an overview of the lighting plan?
Sure. So the lighting was done, so we've got I guess, are you looking for, you want detailed information or just kind of like an overview of how the design was approached?
Well, I'm just looking at the standards for lighting, and we specifically have in our regulations that they need to be shielded with low luminance lamps, specifically 150 watts or 2,000 lumens. So I was just checking what you were proposing.
Yep. Okay, so the parking lot lights that are lighting the parking area and the traveled ways, so they're 20-foot tall light fixtures, and they're 80-watt LED lights that are being used. Those are the pole-mounted fixtures that are noted as the Type A, Type B fixtures, and then there are building-mounted lights that are 55-watt lights that are kind of around the perimeter of the building that kind of light the front sidewalk that's along the front of the building, and then provide lighting into like security lighting around the perimeter, the service area for evening operations. So the overall average illumination levels for the parking lot, so you can see there's like a magenta dashed line that defines the statistical area. And so that's used to understand where vehicles, pedestrians are walking and where cars are driving. And so the parking lot, the statistical summary, it's a 1.12 foot candle average around there. And so the design was taken into consideration really the setting of where this is. It's a much more rural application with Enosburg. And so, the lighting levels are kind of at that minimum illumination levels that you would want for safety in a parking lot for this type of application.
Mike, you just want to chat about the foot candles at the property line?
Sure. So foot candles looking to the west side, you can see that they drop off significantly. So we're at 0 well before the parcel boundary. So there shouldn't be any neighboring concerns.
Anything else?
No, that was.
Thank you very much.
Are you discussing easements? Are you discussing?
So in response to the applicant's request to kind of get the temperature of the board, I think that we could probably take a straw poll to just see whether or not the questions that the board had in the original analysis of the 3.3F1 compliance have been properly addressed and appear to be in compliance with the regulations, with the understanding that the straw poll isn't the final decision, but certainly can give you an idea of what the board's frame of mind is at this point. The board willing to do that?
Yes.
You want to pose that question?
Yes, so right now we will take a straw poll of the board to see what the feeling is at this time. Individually or collectively?
In my view, at this point, the concerns that I had with regard to parking located between the roadway and the building appeared to be adequately addressed. And concerns about the screening associated with Route 105 appear to be significantly improved. And I recognize that we're kind of trying to deal with two applications in concurrence here. And some of the questions associated with Route 105 being an adjacent roadway to the original site plan application have been mitigated by the new subdivision proposal. There are still some questions in my mind about the subdivision and the board had made a condition of its original approval of the subdivision that the applicant provide a master plan associated with the development. And I realize that many of the representatives speaking here aren't necessarily addressing that issue from the current landowner's perspective. But I still have some questions about what this new subdivision orientation is going to do in terms of impact on infrastructure and traffic. And it would really be helpful from my perspective for the property owner proposing the subdivision to be able to provide more context for the board to understand how this subdivision may be used and what its impacts will have on neighboring properties. But from the perspective of the site plan, I believe that things have been pretty well addressed.
And I would certainly concur with that. I think that you have addressed a lot of the problems that we had seen in our earlier application process, so.
I don't have any questions. I feel like I've gotten the answers to anything I had currently. I don't think I have anything that would come up. I agree with Matt about the subdivision, but otherwise I have no questions, no issues at this time.
I think you need to project. I think it's hard for them to hear.
We're having a really hard time hearing. I apologize.
Well, of course, we have masks on too,
Sorry.
so that does muffle our voices.
I don't have any questions. All of my questions I asked and I felt like you gave sufficient answers to, so at this time I don't have any other questions or issues currently.
Our two members who are not in attendance, could I have feedback from each of you, please?
I have adequate information to address any prior issues, so I don't have any further questions.
And Steve?
No.
Is Steve available?
Steve Como, can you hear us?
Steve, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Do you have any further questions or concerns from the applicants at this time?
No.
Okay.
I guess the question, Steve, is do you feel like the applicant has addressed the deficiencies in the original application to come into compliance with the denied 3.3F requirements?
Thank you. That's very helpful to hear that. So,
Steve? Como? Yeah.
sorry.
I don't know
Just
if,
to clarify, it seemed like the board kind of just gave a straw poll and said that informally kind of told us that the site plan concerns have been addressed, but there's still some lingering questions about the subdivision. Is that sort of the understanding?
I think that sums it up very well.
Yep.
Perfect. And it's a sketch plan, so we definitely have time in the next, to the future applications for the subdivision to address the concerns that you have.
Yes, I think that's certainly true. From my perspective, the two, I think, real concerns that I still have concerning the subdivision, especially now that it's very clear that we've got a northerly lot for future infill development that has some importance with regard to this lot number 3 not being abutting to Route 105. So having at least some idea about what that future plans are for the applicant making the subdivision would be very useful. it goes to, a comfort level that the board has as to whether or not this development is likely to occur. The other thing that I think has been raised as a concern from some of the interested parties, in particular the village, is a concern for the potential need for a through connector on Jayview Drive to the properties on the south border, in particular Franklin Foods, and whether or not there's a consideration that easements might be available should that future roadway connection be necessary.
Regarding the JView Drive extension, this project does not impede that ability in any way. If JView is going to be extended, it's going to go straight south and feather the wetlands on the property. So the assumed alignment based off of topography and wetlands to me would be due south to the southern property, which is not owned by Franklin Foods. So there is additional coordination with the adjacent lot owners that'll be needed to kind of get that extension to happen. But at this time, I mean, the main point I want to bring up is that the Tractor Supply development in no way and the subdivision in no way impedes the ability to extend JView Drive. Mr. Plosier and Mr. Waxler from Parmelo are here, and they could answer any additional questions or provide whatever follow-up regarding that as well.
Yeah, and I understand, Stephen. It's a little bit hard to separate the two issues because they're very much commingled. But we have parties with different interests, and I do understand what you're saying about the site plan for lot number 3 not creating any kind of impedance to those other potential needs with the subdivision. But it would be nice to hear from representatives from Pomerleau about what their thoughts are on this subdivision and where it's going after this Tractor Supply development.
Steve, Brian, did you make that out?
No, and I'm on to, this is Ernie Pomerleau. We've talked with the community for quite a while, and as part of this, we would be happy to provide right-of-ways for the future. I think it's a good connection. And I know the Tractor Supply in no way impacts that whatsoever. There's a very strong list of items, however, that has to be addressed that I don't think can be addressed in this particular moment in time with ravines, with wetlands, with stormwater, with acquisition of another parcel of land that we don't own. The cost and the like, but I think we've indicated to, and I know Brian has, to the town manager and the community for probably a dozen years that we would participate in providing right-of-ways and helping to activate that if in fact it was in the interest of the cheese factory, the community. I know it goes to the back of their place. And there may be some concerns from the residential development in the area. And so there's a lot of moving parts around this. And we've continued to be, collaborative in the discussion, but there's so many elements tied to that to make that a condition or anything of this permit would be impossible at this time. But we would put it out that we would provide right-of-ways and continue to evaluate that possibility.
Mr. Pomerleau, can we get you to acknowledge the oath, please?
I'm sorry, I can't hear that.
I know it's tough with your mask on, but you're going to have to move closer to the mics.
Could you acknowledge the oath, Mr. Pomerleau?
Did I what again? I'm sorry.
Can you acknowledge the oath? Will you, please?
Could I? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I thought you said oak. I was like, is that a tree? No, I acknowledge the oath. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is Cooper. Obviously, I can't speak to the second issue, but as far as the first issue goes, I spoke about this, sort of my concerns about, making representations about what's going on Lot 3. And I guess my question would be if any representation was made, would we, well, I suppose it's, would the landowner be held accountable to that?
Could you do that question one more time? I apologize.
I heard the question to us, or the concern, the first concern about the proposed subdivision was that there was a request to provide an indication of what future development was going to go on that parcel. Did I understand that correctly, or did I misunderstand?
Are you asking Steve? Steve, are you answering that, or?
No, I'm asking the board. I'm sorry. I'm asking the board. This is.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yes, Mr. Cooper, this is Mr. Minor. That's an accurate interpretation of what I said. I was looking for some indication, and what we had requested in the conditional approval of the site plan, or the sketch plan, was for the applicant to provide a master plan for the subdivision. And I know that was a point of contention that the applicant wished for us to reconsider.
Well,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yes, that is correct. I mean, at this point, there is no plan for what's going to happen in that future development area, other than it being allotted for future development. In the future, we envision a mix of commercial, retail, similar uses that are already exist on the properties that surround it. But to this date, we have not signed on additional tenants, and so the uses remain unknown, the tenants remain unknown, and as such, the building layouts and the parking lot that would be developed in the area remain unknown. So while we hope, along with the town, that area is certainly developed, the plan for that development, there's no way that we would be able to show anything that is likely to happen. We don't know. I mean, I can plop a building and a parking lot on the plan for you, but I would be hesitant to do that because I wouldn't want to make a representation of something that we end up not doing. I'd rather do it right, and in the future, as a tenant comes along our way that wants to occupy that area, we'll lay out a plan, come back before the commission, and hopefully work out something that ties them into our development.
If I might, this is Angela. Part of the application requirements for the subdivision and the preliminary plan phase for a major subdivision, if this is deemed a major subdivision, maybe already has been. Says the master plan as required indicates proposed roads, driveways, streets, the future probable lot lines, building envelopes of the remaining portion of the tract or adjacent properties, and a description of the probable uses drawn in a sketch plan format. This includes information about subdivision phasing. So that's part of one of the, can be required as part of the major subdivision preliminary plan, which would be the next phase.
And with respect, Mr. Darling, I think part of the thing that creates confusion for the board, unless I'm mistaken, you're not speaking on behalf of Pomerleau Family Partnership, but rather NERP as you're making those comments. And really the subdivision applicant is Pomerleau Family Partnership.
That is correct. We are still acquiring that property. That we intend to acquire that property, and whether it be us or whether it be Pomerleau in the future, there is no plans for what we can do there, other than it's zoned for retail, zoned for commercial, and our intent is to acquire it along with the Tractor Supply and develop it.
So as part of the next phase, a master plan seems to be required in the preliminary plan phase.
of a probable use.
And quite frankly, that doesn't have to be extensive. As Angela read from the regulation, it could be a potential building envelope, and it could be a narrative description of what the potential use of that additional lots would be. And it should also give us some indication about whether or not there's going to be any potential development or construction south of Hannaford on the remainder of lot number 1. Those are both things that are factors in terms of considering this subdivision.
If I may, Angela, do I understand that, because I'm finally finding what you're talking about on table 7.1, preliminary plan. Are you interpreting the words as required as being required?
I think I'm more hoping that this gets addressed so that we're not misstepping or anybody in this conversation is misstepping. And so I'm more bringing it up so that we can have a discussion about it and it doesn't get missed.
Absolutely. I'm just looking at the prior pages. It looks like where something is required, there's a check mark. And that where it's not necessarily required, there's an as required. And if we're not proposing a master plan, then perhaps that might be interpreted as not being required, because in this particular case, we're not proposing a master plan, so that should not be required.
No, I think sorry. If the board could confirm what I'm thinking this regulation says, as required by the board. So a check mark is a definite yes, you must submit these documents as part of a submission in each phase. And then as required, I know was something that was originally required from a requirement of this application from the board. And as required is as required by the board. Can the board confirm agreement or not on that?
Yes, I think that's accurately stated, and I would suggest that, given that that was a requirement in our initial conditional approval for the subdivision, I think it's reasonable to assume, until you hear otherwise from the board, that we probably have not moved off that expectation.
If I could just say a couple quick things. The only reason this is a major application is due to the interpretation that that minor widening of JV Drive intersection with Route 105 constitutes road widening, according to the board. And the other thing is, I think the major concern when it comes to that was expressed was, if we do come up with a sketch plan, does that beholden the next property owner to follow that, or is it just something for the board to understand what could happen there, but it doesn't become a requirement moving forward that gets built? Because I think that's where the main concern is, if I'm hearing everybody correctly.
And just to add on, I just don't understand why the board would want to tie the hands of a future developer into doing something that they may not be able to do. And I just would encourage you to consider that we're trying to develop that property more than anyone. Clearly, we have as much interest in doing that as anyone, or the Pomelos. I just would encourage the board to consider that. Thank you.
And look, we want to work with you guys, and we can give you guys the narrative. I mean, the narrative would basically be a summary of your own use regulations as in terms of what could go there, because you guys have dictated what can go there, rightfully so. But we can give you a narrative of what the possibilities are. But in terms of coming up with a plan, there's just no way it would be. I can't do it, okay? Because there's no proposal. I don't know what could go there. Dunkin' Donuts is 1,500 square feet. A Tractor Supply is 20,000 square feet. How do I know what tenants want to go there, what size their footprints needs are going to be? But a narrative, I'm happy to give you a narrative of what could possibly go in front of our Tractor Supply or on that vacant lot, and Pomelos can give you a narrative of the allowed uses behind their property.
So can the board clarify what, yes or no, what a master plan means? Are we tying the applicant's hands and the owner's hands by asking for a master plan? Which is discussing things like a description of probable uses. Probable could be what's allowed and or what's planned. Those are different.
I can only speak for myself at this stage, but I would say that it's not my intent to try to tie the applicant's hands or to bind them to a potential future use that changes with time. We understand that, or I understand that the conditions today may be different than the conditions tomorrow, and this is proposed future development, not current development. And we certainly will need to cross the bridge at any time that this project comes before the board again for that future development to make sure that it's in compliance with the regulations. But it's helpful, I think, to understand as this initial subdivision is considered for approval, what potentially is going to go on with the entire site and its impacts on both traffic flow and interconnectivity with adjoining properties.
Okay, so narrative and potential building envelopes would potentially satisfy, because I mean the building envelopes, that's the easement, you know, essentially minus some of the unbuildable areas. You know, we could provide that information and then, you know, discuss the intentions of the Parmelos and you know the applicants in general, and you know, the utility connections, things of that nature. I mean, it seems to me the intention of that is to make sure it's set up for development, that it doesn't preclude future ability to develop things of that nature, and you just kind of want it roughly framed. Is that kind of it?
That's a reasonable interpretation of what I was trying to say, yes.
Okay.
Wait, so if I might, just because I know we'll have this conversation tomorrow or the next day. So are you thinking of a narrative of possible ideas based on what is allowed, plus showing a master plan with a building envelope there with nothing on it that states what the probable use might be?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, I'm speaking for myself, and I will have to obviously confirm with the applicant, but I mean, the building envelopes are pretty much sort of on the plan already. I could just more roughly, I could just define them better. I mean, they're the setbacks minus whatever unbuildable areas there are. We have access already established, tended access already established. We already have, you know, the intention of how we're going to hook up utilities established. So, I mean, I think, that northern lot, if the Tractor Supply is approved, is set up to develop almost right away. Just needs town and Act 250 approval, but I mean, the infrastructure will be there. We could say that. We could say what the applicants are thinking at the moment for that lot 4, in addition to the southern portion of lot 1, if there is any intention to do anything back there. So I don't think that beholdens anybody, and if that's the comfort level the board needs, I think that can be provided with basically what's here, with just some additional narrative.
And I want to clarify, I've only spoken on from my perspective, so I want to encourage other board members to share their points of view on this topic as well.
I would agree. I think that a simple narrative with the building envelopes would be helpful. We aren't, I say that we aren't, in my perspective, we're not trying to hold you to anything specific. It's just if you have an idea of what you may be doing with development on those lots, it would be nice to know that. Just in that narrative, if there isn't, which it sounds like there is not, you can include that as well. And this is, in that narrative, you can put, this is the possibilities in the future. It's just, it's nothing that we're trying to hold you to, and it's not something that will be held to in the future. Speaking for myself.
And I think it's just kind of a clarification of what the future plans may hold. So that's, from my perspective, that's where we would certainly gain a little more insight into what could happen.
Yeah, I think I personally have clarity, and as long as there's no push, as long as the applicant agrees, I think that could be done in the next when we move on to the beyond sketch plan to preliminary.
I guess if I may, I just have a question about the review process. Since we're basically making this up, what kind of review and approval does the town want to have over this? Does that approval, or does there need to be an approval of this plan, or is it just a submittal to say, like, we can fit a 10,000 square foot building over here and a 20 or 2,000 square foot building over there and something else in the middle? Is it, or is there going to be an approval needed for that in a similar type of a review process that we're going through now? Because we'll just make one up.
No, there's no approval process for the master plan. It's just included with your subdivision.
Yeah, it's for reference. It's for reference information. It's not going to be subject to specific regulation approval of the proposed envelopes.
It is a
submittal. A master plan meets the intent of that condition.
Correct.
Just the submission of a master plan.
But please, if I might add, it should closely meet, it's a submission requirement for the next phase, the preliminary phase. So it should meet most of what it's asking for in that page 73 master plan description. And I guess maybe a question out there is probable uses. Can that be as basic as future commercial use stated on the master plan? Can it be proposed future retail space with a building envelope indicated in this master plan on lot 4? Things like that. Is there any clarification on that from the board?
It says description of probable uses, so examples might be helpful.
Yeah. But if it could not be vague so that we're kind of reinventing the wheel again and taking more of your time and the board's in that master plan submission, so that, because I'm going to be the one to get it, and then we'll spend time on the phone, and if we might today splice through what everybody means by that so we're clear on what is supposed to be submitted, I would really appreciate that.
This is Ernie Pommel again. We'll work with you on our side. We've already done some pretty exhaustive studies on our side, so I think we already have the data that we can submit to you.
Great.
Thank you.
That would be helpful.
Thank you.
Sure.
And looking at the master plan requirements on page 73, I think a lot of it's already there, and it's just a matter of filling in a few minor holes and just providing a little more information.
Right. I agree.
If I might, on another subject, maybe you've already answered it. I feel as though it's going to come up tomorrow, so I'd rather address it while the board is here and we're all here. Again, that easement for future access to Franklin Foods and that whole piece. I think what was hoped for is that there would be a reservation, an easement reservation of some sort over the proposed Tractor Supply lot to get to the Franklin Foods lot for future expansion of that road. Has that been answered?
This is Ernie Pomelo. The land that you would have in question, the way I saw the proposed on one of your master plans, would be on our land, not on the Tractor Supply land.
Yes, I think there are wetland impacts associated with the southeast corner of lot number 3 that would not allow easily for construction of any kind of roadway across the corner of that lot.
So what the board is then faced with, and you as an applicant, is you can reserve, you can allow an easement over the remaining Pomerleau land, but it intersects with or is contiguous to a third party altogether.
That's understood.
And so then all of a sudden your answer could be in the future, I'm sorry, we can't get a right of way over the Pencost lot because they don't want to.
I think Mr. Pomerleau kind of addressed the fact that there are multiple parties and moving parts associated with that.
How will that be memorialized at the close of this process? Will it be on a map, an approved map, an indication that there is a future reservation for expansion of the roadway to connect to Franklin Foods?
Yes, we can work with you on that.
Yeah,
But let me jump. This is Steve Closure. I acknowledge the oath. Let me just make sure Mr. Pomeroy is on the phone. He doesn't see the drawing. This right of way and easement for the future possible road is at a future discussion. I don't think it would be part of a master plan right now. Correct?
Right. What we're saying is that we've seen the plans that the town, you know, it's been a dozen years of connecting to, you know, Franklin cheese. And so it goes to the back of the cheese property. It goes over a property we do not own. And we would, what I was saying is that we would collaborate with the community to, so they don't have to do eminent domain. We would provide easements in a corridor. But there's a ton of studies that have not been done as it relates to the ravine, to the cost, to the stormwater, to what the neighbors think about that, because it really just goes to the back of the building. So we're happy to participate and to create that access. We always have been. And what I'm saying at this point, we will provide, as we work with the community, a layout that effectively runs through our property so that if and when in the future a connection seemed to be appropriate by the community, they wouldn't have to worry about getting the land. They'd already have a reserved opportunity to claim that land for the future.
Yeah, and Angela, kind of getting to your one point, the tractor supply lot would not be a part of that, as far as I've seen it laid out and discussed and planned. It's always been going straight south to the property boundary and then heading to the southwest.
Correct.
But again, am I missing something? There would still have to be permission or participation by the Pancoast owner, the owner of that southerly lot, because the remaining lands of Mr. Pomerleau after this proposed subdivision do not intersect with the Franklin Foods property.
That is correct. We have no control over the adjacent property.
Right. There's always going to be a third party. There's Franklin Foods and Pomerleau are kind of catty corner to each other. So whether it's, I mean, there's going to be a need for a third party, and there's the one party, you know, Pomerleau, who has the ability to speak, is saying they're cooperative. We don't know about the property to the south, but the town always has the option for eminent domain. That's not going to be needed for this property.
Yeah, I think you made that clear.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much all we're saying. There's no way to determine at this point, of course, what the costs are, whether we can get through wetlands with the state or the federal, the ravines, you know, what's the issue around stormwater, how that will be. We know how to deal with that at the present, just like Tractor Supply is addressing Act 64 on their premises, and we'll be doing it on ours. The road is you know, has been on the wish list of the community for quite some time, and I understand why. I think all we were trying to say is that exactly what Steve was putting out, we will work with you in some guidelines so that you don't have to worry about eminent domain. If and when that time comes that it makes sense to do that connection, we will already have provided permission. Thank you.
And just for the record, I have the opportunities map up in the Enosburg Vital Village project that shows the alignment that that I believe is part of the planning process. And you can see it goes straight south and then hooks to the southwest, and that's nothing's being impeded by the proposed subdivision or development here. So I mean that's still the potential, and you're not making this connection truck compliant without getting concurrence from the property to the south, among other things.
Agreed.
Bummer.
Any other questions from board members?
We addressed 3.3F, we have beat it up, right? I think so. I think we beat it over the head.
Mm-hmm.
We had a pretty lengthy discussion about that future right-of-way. It sounds like Mr. Pomerleau is interested in being involved in that and has agreed to it. And heavy screening is planned on the north side of Lot 3 and between the two lots.
Yes.
There's an intervening lot between the highway and the proposed Tractor Supply lot. The front of the building is going to be on the north side. Sounds like the proposed screening with the landscaping could prove to be 6 feet when it's installed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty significant, I would agree, I would think. And that's what we would expect. Just to avoid the little itty bitty things that I've seen going through development like this, to be avoided, so that we have the neighbors calling the zoning office. Does everybody agree that we've turned over the stones?
Yes.
There's no approval, but we feel like we're relatively well informed.
Yeah, at this stage, I feel like enough evidence is provided for me to reach some findings of fact.
Any other comments from the board members who are not in attendance physically?
No, nothing further for me.
Okay. And Steve?
No.
Any further questions from the applicant?
No, I don't know.
Applicant?
Were you able to hear that, Stephen? Are there any more questions from the applicant?
I don't have any. Most of my team does.
Again, really want to thank the applicant for the efforts that have been made to pull together additional evidence and address the concerns about the regulation compliance.
Are you folks able to hear us on this end?
I didn't hear that, no.
Yeah, I didn't think. Are there any other, the question of the chair of the board is, are there any other questions of the applicant or the owner
Is my mic not
to these
on?
applications?
Is my mic not working?
Steve Plozier with Pomelos. I'd like to just echo Steve Diaglio's comments in the beginning, and I know it's been a little difficult for two developers working with town and villages and trying to put a project together, but we're doing our best to try to get things through, create more jobs, and appreciate the board's helping the team put this together.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes our public hearing for this evening. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you much for your time, board. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
In the regulations for 3.3F, which is what we cited for their denial, the two major points have been properly addressed, and I would say that they're in compliance.
Okay, so we should probably
Steve, how are you hearing us now? Good?
move to do deliberative.
Pizza, anyone?
But as Angela said, once we close this hearing,
I'm fine with it.
we're not able to hear any new evidence.
Well, in the past, what we did, we discontinued it, but how late are we
No, we
staying?
closed
this
the
evening?
hearing.
Hopefully not.
Too
So
quickly.
here's, I was thinking about this earlier, knowing that this hearing could go for quite some time. We can gather in deliberative session without posting a notice for a public hearing.
Yeah, you can deliberate anytime.
We can deliberate as a group without having to notice a public hearing,
Correct.
Yeah.
right? So we can come together as many times over the next several days or weeks as we need to hash this out, to go through it in very careful, detailed format. And-
That's what we did initially.
Yeah, and to,
Yeah, I'm having, sorry, Matt, I'm having a super hard time hearing you, but that would be, my suggestion. I was just gonna say, is there a way to, continue the deliberation, like in 2 weeks, and, hash all of these out? I'm just not sure. I'm only catching bits and pieces of what you're saying.
yeah, I think we're gonna do a poor job tonight if we try and sit here and finish getting to a written decision.
I'm 23 right now.
Yeah. So, how does most of the board feel about time frame? Can we come together in a few days or a week?
Sure.
I
I would say a week, at least.
would be, I think a week from this evening would be appropriate.
It's a smart move, I
Yes.
feel, with what brain power we have left after all that.
That would give us each some time to go back through our notes.
Everybody's here, how about I do the minutes?
We will. We're just trying to determine what we want to do for deliberations. You're not still recording, are you?
I am.
Okay.
I stopped briefly, but started again since you guys sounded like you were starting back up.
Yeah, we need to, I guess, make a decision about whether or not we're going to close the hearing and move into deliberation. But as Steve pointed out, we need to take some action on minutes, and we should do that in the public portion of the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can skip the minutes now then.
Everybody had a chance to read them?
Yeah.
I move
You
I move for approval of the minutes
All
from
right.
September 23rd.
I have 1 minute here. Just gotta get my
Hold it.
bearings here. Yeah, I
Okay,
did.
we'll give you a second. Tell us when.
One minute.
Did I hear a second?
Well, not yet. We're
I'll
waiting. Hold it. Well, you gonna second it, Steve? Steve?
He did.
Steve's gonna second it. Are you ready for the
Matt
question?
moves to approve
Yep.
the, what was it, 9/23?
September 23rd minutes.
Seconded by
Steve Como. Further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? The minutes have been accepted. So at this time, are we going to set a date for a week from this
I think we
evening?
need to motion to go into deliberative session first.
Yeah, I think we want to
Oh, okay.
close the hearing and move into
Deliberative?
deliberative session.
Okay.
All right, so are we, and what, brain dead again.
I move that we,
Did we close the hearings on all the others? We did, right?
I move that we close the hearings and move to deliberative session.
Close the public hearing on all
All.
applications.
All applications.
All applications, motion seconded by Jessica.
Jessica?
Yes.
Okay.
So we are now in deliberative session?
No,
No, we're not.
you just closed the hearing. You gotta make a motion to go into deliberative session.
All right. Would someone like to make that motion?
I will. I motion to go into the deliberative session.
All right.